Hi everyone, welcome to or back to my channel. My name is Shea, and if you're new here, I've been living in Bologna, Italy for the past year and a half studying Italian. In today's video, I wanted to share some knowledge that I've acquired along the way during my language learning journey. I'm learning Italian, but these tips are general so they can apply to anyone who's learning any sort of language. So I'll share some tips that I either tried or heard during my language learning journey and share whether or not they were helpful or maybe they're tips that you should probably avoid. As a disclaimer, I am not any sort of certified instructor or an expert. These are just some things that I've noticed or experienced during my years of language learning. So first off, we'll start with some good advice. Find study methods that you actually enjoy. One of the hardest parts about self-study or studying a language in general is staying motivated. So don't feel constrained by the traditional methods that you may have used in school. You need to find study methods that are actually enjoyable and engaging. So figure out how to incorporate language learning into hobbies or things that you already do and enjoy doing. These could be things like watching TV series, cooking, you could find a recipe in your target language, playing video games, you could change the language of your game or join a server from a different country in a different language, reading books in your target language. And I actually do have a video all about this, so be sure to check that out if you want more information about how you can incorporate your hobbies into language learning. And also remember that everyone is different, so while you may really enjoy reading in your target language, someone else may prefer listening to podcasts or watching TV series. Maybe if you don't enjoy cooking, that doesn't mean that you have to start using recipes in another language. Make sure that your language learning study methods are personalized for you. And for bad advice, start with grammar textbooks. Should we learn languages like we did in school? Absolutely not. If you went through the American school system like me, chances are the ways that you learned languages in high school probably were not very effective. Again, everyone's situation is different, but talking with most of my American friends, we all agree that the language learning methods within high school were not very effective at all. I talk to so many Americans who say, yeah, I took 4 years of Spanish or French during high school. I don't remember anything. I'm not saying that grammar textbooks are bad. Definitely not. I'm not saying that you should completely avoid textbooks, but a lot of people think that when they first start learning a language, they just need to buy a bunch of textbooks and then you'll be set. You have everything you need in these textbooks. I think that grammar textbooks are a really great way to get the foundational knowledge of grammar that you need when starting to learn a new language. However, it's really important to have a well-rounded study plan. You want to have different activities and different study methods. You don't want to just rely on one textbook. You don't need to avoid them completely. Obviously, like I said, grammar textbooks can be really helpful to get that foundation that you need. But don't put so much emphasis on them, and I wouldn't rely on them completely. Now, if you're just starting, I think it's totally fine to get one textbook. Try to just do one. Don't go on Amazon and order 5 different textbooks. You don't need them. And chances are you won't even look through all of them. So just choose one if you really want a textbook and use that to get your base knowledge. After that, learning language, obviously you'll need to speak, you'll need to do reading, writing, other types of exercises, and you won't be able to fully learn a language just from a textbook. Languages are meant to be spoken. You can learn through so many other activities, as I mentioned in the first point. That leads me to good advice: speak as much as you can. I talked to myself so much when I first started learning Italian. When I was showering, when I was just cleaning around the house, when I was in the car driving, I was having conversations with myself, I was having like fake interviews with myself. Even though you're probably making mistakes, you're learning how to form sentences, how to use what you've learned, and actually put it into practice. And I mean, it's really good if you are nervous at first to actually speak to another person. At least you can get speaking practice just on your own if you're a little nervous to first start speaking with someone else. But if you do want to start speaking with native speakers, you can try apps like HelloTalk or Tandem. You can get them on your phone and either send audio messages or just write to native speakers. And it's a really helpful way to get some speaking practice and get feedback from native speakers. Or if you want someone more professional, like an actual tutor, you can use italki. I have a referral code down below, and it's a great way to get speaking practice at a very low cost because lessons start around $5. So it's something that I found very helpful. But basically overall, just speak. Just blab like like a baby. When babies are learning languages, they're just usually saying nonsense, but it's because they're learning. Don't worry about making mistakes, just speak as much as you can. And the next bad advice, study hundreds of flashcards every day to memorize vocabulary. Learning vocabulary is fundamental when learning a new language, otherwise you wouldn't be able to form sentences or understand other people. However, most of us learned vocabulary in school by cramming the day before a quiz using a bunch of flashcards, and that method is obviously not helpful in the long run. Sure, it may work if you have a quiz later on in the week, but if you really want to commit those vocabulary words to memory, studying hundreds of flashcards just isn't the way to go. It's much better to learn vocabulary through context, by actually using the word, understanding the word, not just having word and term, and not really understanding where it goes in a sentence, how to use it, does it have different meanings when it's with other words? Things like that you won't be able to understand if you're just studying flashcards. The way I like learning new vocabulary now is by actually trying to use the words that I just learned. So if I'm reading a book or watching a TV series and a new word that's unfamiliar to me pops up frequently, I like to make note of it, and maybe after I finish reading a chapter, I summarize what I just read using those new vocabulary words. Or if I've watched a series, the next day if I'm talking with someone, I'll try to use the word that I learned or the new phrase that I learned. That way I can really commit it to memory and make sure it's now added to a part of my vocabulary that I use. Don't worry about studying hundreds of flashcards every day. It's definitely not necessary. The next good advice, be consistent, but also realistic about your goals. It's hard to track progress if you don't set any goals. Early on in your language learning journey, it's really important to set goals like read one chapter of my book this week or have a 15-minute conversation with a native speaker. Be very specific about the goals that you set. However, don't set goals that are unrealistic, otherwise you're just setting yourself up for failure, and it will probably ruin your motivation if you're consistently not meeting any of the goals that you set because you made them way too big. Match your goals with your level. If you want to start reading in your target language but you're a beginner, make sure that the books that you're reading are a children's book or a short story. Definitely don't pick out some really complex, long novel that you will not be able to understand at all. Also, be realistic with your schedule. Do you have a full-time job? Are you a student? How much time do you really have to set aside every week to study? You may not be able to find time to study every single day, but that's fine. You probably can't set 10 goals for 1 week and be able to actually achieve all of them. So be realistic about your schedule and what works for you. Never compare yourself to other people, the time that they have to study. It might not be realistic for your schedule. If you have time to study 30 minutes a day, that's great. If you only have time for 20 minutes, maybe 4 times a week, that's also fine, just as long as you're staying consistent to that study window that you do have and stick with it. And my next bad advice, writing down new words in a notebook to make your own dictionary. When I first started reading books in Italian, I stopped to look up every single word I didn't know. Obviously, this also slowed me down a lot when reading, and it's hard to comprehend what you are reading if you are continuously stopping. Do you want to know how many times that I actually went back to review that notebook where I wrote all those words? None. 0. I have not opened that notebook up again since I first started using it. I never went back to review those words. Many times we write down these words because it seems like a good idea, it seems like you're super organized. I'm sure you see videos or aesthetic study videos of people writing down with highlighters. Chances are you probably won't come back to revisit these words. Maybe you do, but probably not consistently and probably not more than once or twice. It's similar to the flashcard comment that I made earlier on, where it's actually better to just put these words into context and practice using them right after learning them. You don't need to store them away in some sort of notebook or with flashcards. It's better to just practice using these new words right away. So using these words in your own sentences will be a lot more beneficial than memorizing them through flashcards or going back and memorizing them from your own personal dictionary that you've made in your notebook. Some more good advice, learn as if you are a baby. When do we start to learn our native language? Right away, when we're a literal baby. Do you expect a newborn baby to start reading a 400-page novel right away? No, so neither should you. I think adults who are learning a new language feel very strange to do things like watch kids shows or read children's stories because you think, oh, I'm an adult, like I'm more sophisticated than this. But the best advice I've ever heard is to learn as if you're a baby, because that is when we acquire languages. Also, as I mentioned earlier, just babble like a kid. Kids are constantly talking, they're saying nonsense, but that's how they're actually learning new words and how to pronounce things, so you should do the same. Repeat and imitate sounds to work on your pronunciation. And also ask questions like little kids. I know it can be super annoying, but if you're struggling to have a conversation with a native speaker, just ask them a bunch of questions like, why is this way? Why is this like that? Why? All these questions that, little kids ask, like, why is the sky blue? It's annoying, but just ask a lot of questions to get practice and keep the conversation going and get a deeper understanding of the language. And the final bad advice is to wait until you're at a certain level to start speaking. It's a very common misunderstanding that you have to wait to be good enough to start actually speaking your target language. I am definitely very guilty of this too, but there's no perfect time to start speaking. You can start speaking from literal day one of learning a new language. Form the most simple sentences, learn how to introduce yourself, how old you are, where you're from, how to ask someone else those questions. You can even write little dialogues or scripts to practice with yourself or with a friend. People who actually jump in and go for it right away will learn a lot faster and get over that embarrassment, because I feel like the more you wait, the more you build up this fear and you let it kind of like overwhelm you of, no, I'm not ready. And then it's a lot harder later on to actually start having those conversations. Languages are obviously how we communicate, so the sooner you start speaking, the faster you will be able to acquire the new language. So there you have it, some of the best and worst advice that I have heard or experienced throughout my language learning journey. Of course, there will always be more tips, so feel free to leave some of your advice in the comments below, or maybe also some things that you heard that actually didn't work for you in the long run. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, I really appreciate the support, so please like and subscribe if you found this video helpful, and I will see you all again soon. Bye!